one of our subscribers was watching our quick tip on atmosphere, and says, atmosphere has always been an issue for me. Could you do a tip on shafts of light through trees? That's pretty atmospheric, but I won't give you the shaft. Okay, like everything else in nature, or maybe not in nature, things vary according to what's happening. And when we have light coming through the trees, when it's foggy, when there are particles of water in the air, they're going to create what we call the shafts of light, or sun rays, different things it's called. But you'll see all different variations on that, and there are different technical ways to approach it. So I'm just going to show you one technical way to approach, which probably can lead you then to exploring others. But first of all, look at the variations of the kinds of things we have. Now, those particles of water are pretty heavy, and they actually have volume to them, so they're actually creating gradations. Anything that has volume will create gradations, or where there is a variation in light, they'll be creating gradations. And so we got both. So if you look right through here, you see there's a very soft and gentle gradation that goes from dark gradually to light, gradually back to dark, gradually back to light, and so on. Here we see a more extreme interpretation of the shaft of light, but we're still seeing that same thing, especially around the edges here. We're still seeing that same principle of gradation that goes light to dark to light to dark to light to dark. And there's your clue about how to approach it technically. We see this is a much softer version here of the light, very, very subtle shafts of light, or rays of light. So let's just take a look at what we might do technically to make that sort of thing happen. I've got here one that I have cropped. I've seen similar to the ones you were just looking at, that I've cropped so that we can look more carefully at just what's happening with those sunbeams as they're coming through the forest. Now, as you've heard me say so many times on these quick tips, you will see what you look for. If you're looking for shafts of light or sunbeams, you're not going to see how to do them. Switch your attention to what they're causing to happen visually, to the visual language. And when you switch to the visual language, you'll see what's actually happening and what to do. What I mean by visual language? I mean visually what's happening with dark, what's happening with light. Is there strong contrast between dark and light? Is there gradation between dark and light? Which direction is it going? All those things that have to do with the visual language are going to tell you what to look for. And if you're looking for those things, that's what you're going to see. So I've broken this thing down. We'll start right here where I have it number one. What I've done is I've gone into just a section right in here, and I've thrown it out of focus so that you can see it more easily. And here I've pulled out just a section right in here. So this is the pattern right there. There's the pattern that shows us the gradation I was talking about earlier. And look what, there are two parts to this gradation. One is the gradation itself and what's happening. Light gradates into dark, gradates into light, gradates into dark, gradates into light, gradates into dark, gradates into light, grades in dark, and there are different degrees of dark. These darks are darker than these darks. These lights are darker than these lights. But we still have that gradation that goes darker to lighter to darker to lighter to darker to lighter, and the overall thing is gradated dark to light. Now, and so now if you look here in the blurred version, you can actually see that, and then you look here, you can see how that is underneath everything else that we're seeing. All these little details that are popping through, the little variations in textures that we'll see popping through, are popping through that gradation. So that's one thing that's happening. But the other thing that's happening is the direction in which those gradations are moving. They're not all moving in one direction, and they never are when you have beams of light coming through, well, in this case coming through the forest or the foliage, which is what this viewer requested. But the sunbeams are coming from the sunlight, which is a light source up there, and they're moving like this, or let's say like that. So they're spreading out. So if you look here, you'll see they're moving kind of in a one-point perspective, where they're actually spreading out. These are getting, see, like that, kind of like a fan. The whole thing is spreading out. You can actually feel that movement here. So the movement is spreading this way. That means that the closer these are to the sun, the more narrow the gradations between them. Dark light, dark light. So those little bits between them. As it gets further away from the sun, or closer to where we are, the wider those things spread. Now we can really see that here in this one. You see how close those beams are to each other. I mean, how the lights are to the dark. See how close they are, and you see how wide they spread out here. Well, this is the extreme version of what we're looking at there. So how do you do that? Well, there are 2 or 3 ways that can be done. If you're doing it alla prima, that's what I'm going to show you now. If you're doing this in a layered process where one layer gets dry before you go to the next layer, you simply would build a gradation of the colors or the colors and values you see behind there. Once that's dry, you take a lighter color and then pull it in this direction over it. But that's not what I'm going to show you. There are other YouTube videos, other people who can show you how to do that. I'm going to show you the more difficult one. Not really difficult, but it requires a little practice. So here we go. And so what I'm going to do here, first of all, let's look at the value. We always look at the value. Let's look at the value. The value in here, that's not as light as you might think. See? Now here's the lightest part of the value scale. And you can see how much darker this whole area is. Even the very lighter part, you see, is darker than the lightest light of the value scale. So we can see that the value we're looking at here is closer. We see it's darker right here than that. It's a little bit closer in value here, and a little bit closer. So the value range is sort of in that low light value range. The values around it that we can see things, where we can see things up closer to us, they're more contrasty, and they're darker. They're more in shadow. So that is kind of a backlight. If you saw the quick tip we did before we did this one, then which is about backlight, this is a similar principle, except that we're also using the rays of light. So usually when you're going to see those rays of light coming through, whatever is closer to you or between you and where the rays are, as you can see here, is going to be darker or have stronger value contrast. Right here you see a stronger value contrast. So those are the 2 things I want to show you. And let's just look at the technical approach. The first thing we need to do is gradation that moves in a direction. And what do we need for that? We need 2 values. We'll need a gradation that goes from like here to here, but there'll be 2 value differences between each of those. So the best thing to do is to start with one value, which would be the darkest value. Now I'm going just to reach for a blue here that would be, that's in that dark value range, and I'm going to add a little bit of violet to the blue here and a little bit of the green to the violet there, and get that more neutral. There we go. Pulling that into a much more neutral color. Neutral hue, I should say. So that would be very close. I'm more interested here, showing you, I'm more interested in interpreting the value I'm seeing rather than interpreting the color. Alright, so this, get that just a little bit lighter, right in here. This looks to me to be pretty close. Get that a little bit wetter. That looks to me to be pretty close to, let's see if it is. Pretty close to the darker value we're seeing. Okay, so this is where we'll start our pattern. Now just in my brush, I'll just start my pattern. I'm not going to go through this whole thing. I'm just going to start right here. Alright, now in the pattern. Now, I can start the brush moving the pattern, and I can kind of pull the brush, turn the brush in my hand just a little bit to begin to create a wider beam or wider shape. So just leave that like that. Now as I go to the next one, I'm going to make it just a tiny bit lighter. This is just representing the darker. It's showing you a technical process for getting this result. And so now we'll leave some white space here, and then we'll go to the next one and we'll let it fan out like that, and then become a little bit wider as it gets down here. You see already where we're going there. Now we can go to the next one. We're going to get that one a little bit lighter, not much. This gradates. The darks gradates, so they're gradually getting a little, the darks themselves are gradually getting a little bit lighter as they come down. And so we can start right here. That one looks a little bit wider. That one needs to be, I need to get it a little bit lighter than I've gotten it. Just a little bit to show you that gradation. That's a little bit lighter. Okay. And get that just a little bit more under control right there. Alright, now there's a little bit lighter. And as it comes down like that, let's bring on that one on down. Let this sort of start, let the whole exercise sort of stop about right there. So that comes on down, and down here somewhere is the ground. And then it gets even lighter as it spreads out. And usually, these various kinds of things are going to happen with these light beams, depending on what's in front. Depending on what we're seeing right here, whether we're just seeing space. But we could do another one that would do something like that. You see that the movement of those darks fans out like that. Now, we want a gradation of the movement. We want a gradation in between those, but we see they're very close in value. The dark against the light is very close in value. So what we want in this gradation, I'll make some more color and make quite enough there. What we want to happen in this gradation is we want a slightly lighter color. Now it could be, in some cases it's going to be maybe a little bit more neutral. If you look at it right here, a little bit grayer where the light's coming through. You need to observe that, and just observe according to what you see. Or do you see it more neutral? You will paint what you see, as I always say. So are you seeing it more neutral, or are you seeing it with more color? If you see color in it, it probably is going to be a warmer color. So I want to get this color just a little bit warmer right here. Let's see, there we go. Now let's get a little bit lighter, a little bit warmer still, and a little bit lighter. So you may have to work that just a little while, but there we go, right. That's warmer and lighter. Alright, so we'll bring that shaft right through there. And I'm just using the direction of the sunbeam, like this. And I haven't created a gradation yet. I'll come up here, do the same thing, using the direction of the sunbeam, up here. And I might as well go ahead and do something right back in here to help, there we go, help to create the whole principle. And let's see how that goes. That's not dark enough. And let's just get that a little bit darker, that you watch me work this color out here. There we go. A little bit darker and perhaps a little bit cooler right up here. Alright, now going back to moving down. Alright, this needs to be a little bit lighter. A little bit lighter still, so reach for more white. Get that beam a little bit lighter as it moves down, and here it is coming down just a little bit lighter, not much. And then moving down still further, maybe this one could have been a little bit lighter, but we'll see. We'll see. A little bit lighter. Come on, get lighter. A little bit lighter. Here we go. There we go. Now let's do the gradation. We've got the light, dark, light, dark. Let's do the gradation. So we can grade it just by pulling the brush between them like this. Let's get that whole process gradating there. So we're just building a foundation for interpreting the light beams. Now we'll go right here, build a gradation. The light gradates into the dark. If you have trouble gradating, you can turn your brush sideways and do a little bit of something like this, and then pull your brush through it. That creates a little bit more volume, but a little bit more feeling of volume. So we'll just do this all the way. Okay, gradation. Now, the more we stroke it, the more gradation we get between those. Same thing here. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to straddle that just like this and stroke it and get that there we go. That gets a closer value difference. And we'll do the same thing here. Just stroke it like this, a little bit here, 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 like that. Now all that's technical. Now you will probably build your own technique into all that, but all that's technical. So what I would like to have is something similar to what I'm seeing right there. So in order to do that, then I might make a little bit of adjustment before I go ahead and do the second part. Maybe here, make a little bit more of an adjustment. Pull that one, okay, get that just a little bit more, as it goes up, get that a little bit closer to dark and not quite so abrupt, but still a gradation. There we go, like that. Now, alright, and come down this way to give us that kind of downward feeling of the sunbeams. Now what we can do, in the darker areas, we can move in and build just faint images of the forest. So let's do it this way, and this needs to be, those faint images need to be just a little bit darker, not much, or a little bit, let's just say it that way, let's say a little bit more contrast. Okay, so let's say if we have trees back there, those trees would show up a little bit right here, just a little bit right there. You might see a little bit right here. You might see them show up a little bit right there, not quite so much. Maybe not quite so much right in there. As it's coming down, we might have just a little bit, but not that much. Just a little bit of that image shining through the light. But a lot of times the image will get distorted in the light portion, and it won't show quite so much. Then we come back down, and what we see, just a little bit more showing through right here. Let's give that just a little bit more definition right in there. As it's coming down a little bit more here, and just let it gradually form itself a little bit more there and there and there. Now let's see, let's go over just a little bit more of that kind of thing. Or you might see a trunk, maybe kind of like a limb, like we have up there. Give it just a little bit more. But right up there we see that limb that's coming out like, sort of like a little bit darker. It's just a little bit darker and a little bit more distinct, like coming out about right here, like that. And then it might just subtly disperse into the fog, into the sunlight right here. Sunlight, it sort of gets dispersed just a little bit. I'll put that there and just take my finger and pull it in that direction. And then here we see a little bit more, and you might see a little bit more coming right through here, and that's it, and so on and so on and so on. So we see, and then we might see another image forming right here. So that then, now, in those images that are in those shafts of light, we can go back with a clean brush and sort of move over them like this in the same direction. You see what happens? So you can kind of repeat that sort of thing as you are as you're building that. If you want to throw some more light in there, you can. Now that gives you an idea. Let's do the other thing now, is what are we seeing through, and we'll just pick up the darkest dark of what we might see in the trees and see, sort of make that thing make sense. So we might say this is what we're looking through right here. We are this tree in front is between us and the shafts of light. And so that's what we'll do, just kind of place it between us and the shafts of light. And just come on over here. Carried that over a little further than I meant to, but that's alright. Alright, so we had some, have a little bit of that, kind of break that up just a little bit to make it a little bit more dramatic, let that tree kind of come out, what would be there. And this is simply the value of contrast. That tree, this one, is more in shadow. And because it's more in shadow, we can see how those shafts of light work. Okay, I'll bring that down. Just while I'm at it, just go ahead and carry it to the bottom of my little setup here. Let's go out a little bit more like that. Alright, a little bit more like that, a little bit more like that. Now, we need some edge light. And we talked about that a little bit too in the previous quick tip. That, you see right here, the light, the shafts are coming through and they're catching. The sunbeams are catching a little bit of light on the edge of that, on the edge of those trees. So what we'll do is just we'll catch a little bit of light, right like that, and we sort of just randomly place it. Not much, and you can overdo this thing. If you overdo it, it's going to make it sugary, and Lord knows we don't want the sugary part. That's the thing about doing the shafts of light and so on. They do have that kind of mystical. They have that kind of mystical feeling to them, and so I'm going to pull the light back over here just a little bit more, like that. Just sort of emphasize it just a little bit more. Get it a little bit lighter as it goes out closer. So we will be careful that we don't over sweeten it. Okay, now let's see. This is lighter. It's just coming down a little bit lighter here as it's coming down. At this point, now once you get the main theme in, or you get the main background and the gradations going, then you can adjust it according to what you want, to emphasize. So if we want to really emphasize the light, you see, then we can do that here. Just pulling that in just a little bit. Sort of like that. Give a little bit more definition at the top here, just to kind of drive home the point of what would be going on. Kind of let it end about right there. And then we'll get just a little bit more, kind of lost that image just a little bit, this image right here. Or the images that you can see that the light beams sort of destroy. Give just a little bit more emphasis to that. And let's see here, like right in here, it's just a little bit more emphasis here. But if you set up to begin with, you set up your light beams to begin with so that they have that gradation. Then you can develop the whole scene according to where the images are within the light beams themselves. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of throw some more images in here to kind of make a little bit more sense right in there. Now, and then to add just a little bit more to the feeling of the reality, or the feeling of reality, put a little bit more of the images in dark shadow. Not much, but like right around in here, just a little bit more. This is a little bit more right in here. That's just to show you. That doesn't mean that you do that same sort of thing. But it's just to show you, it's for sake of reference of where this thing is coming from. Okay. Now, doing lots of practice exercises will be your key here. But keep in mind that what you're doing is switching your attention away from what it is to what it's doing. And speaking of what it's doing, I'm going to make it do just a little bit more light stuff, like go right through here. Let's get this a little bit more light stuff. Go through here. Let's see. There. And let's get a little bit more right through here and here and here as it comes down. Bending and let it just kind of go off the edge right there. A little bit more through here, here, and here. So perhaps that'll give you the idea now of how you can create beams through foliage. Be sure and view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.